One of our purposes is really going in and looking at reading in different content areas. Today we're going to be working on a lesson that talks about some economic values and some economic vocabulary. Has anyone had any experience in talking about economics at all in the past couple of years? A little bit of experience? We're going to talk a little bit today about the difference between an inventor and an entrepreneur. Sometimes there's a big difference when we talk about comparing what an inventor does, what an innovation is, and talking about how an entrepreneur brings a product or a service to market. Some of the words that we're going to be focusing on today, they're up on the board: inventor, entrepreneur, innovation, risk, producer, resources, incentive, and profit. What do you think profit is?
Like money.
Profit could be money.
What you get from doing something.
Why you do something. Basically, entrepreneurs do things to make profit, and profit is in the form of cash. And that's part of an economic term that we'll be talking about a little bit in this lesson. So I was in a social studies classroom where we were promoting reading and vocabulary that extended economic concepts, which is aligned with our state standards and benchmarks. As you get your reading selection, what I'd like you to do is think of a reading strategy that you've used in the classroom before. Those strategies could be summarization. You might be summarizing that article. You might be doing some pair share reading. You might be looking at that with a partner to talk about, I'm going to read the first paragraph, and then I'm going to have the second person read the second paragraph, and then we're going to come together at the end and say, this is what this activity, what this reading sample was all about. And what I'd like you to do is focus on some of the questions I just gave you. All the responses, all the questions were the same, although they were generic questions. Tried to embed the economic vocabulary that we were trying to cover. That was our goal for today. Embed the vocabulary concepts that were in there. Okay, so what would be the incentive of that person inventing the Eskimo pie?
To make life.
To make money?
To make money and to have like a new brand for the kids to eat. Because there was this one boy who said that he wanted something that kind of like an ice cream sandwich.
When you use guided reading strategies, it just really gives a child another tool, another strategy to use in their repertoire to really focus on what's going on in the readings. I'm going to ask you some other questions, and we're going to have some further discussion about the material that you actually read. Who had the group on the Eskimo pie? Okay, on the Eskimo pie. Who actually invented the Eskimo pie?
Chris Nelson.
Was he necessarily the person that creates the Eskimo pie we go into Jewel today to buy?
No, I think he like took his idea and took it to the company, and then they produced the stuff.
Absolutely. So he may have been the inventor, but he definitely probably wasn't the entrepreneur, was he?
No.
How many variations of Eskimo pies do you see today in the stores?
A lot.
What kind of Eskimo pies are there out there?
Cherry.
Crispy type.
Crispy, right. But I don't think he thought of that when he was creating the Eskimo pie. So in that case, you really could see the difference between an inventor and an entrepreneur. When he created this ice cream sandwich, did he think he was doing it to make money? Was his thought, I'm going to make all kinds of money out there by what product I've just created?
No, he just wanted a different taste for the people who came in.
Absolutely. So sometimes you could see the difference. Inventors really invent things out of necessity, out of need sometimes, out of interest in people, but not really to create a lot of profit and to get a lot of money sometimes. Nice job. Can we give them a round of applause? Great job, ladies. Sometimes you really get caught up in the reading, but if you're really focusing on what we were looking for, an example today was we were really highlighting those economic concepts. So we use the words innovation, we use the words inventor and entrepreneur and entrepreneurship, risks, things like that. So we really try to embed some of those vocabulary words when we're looking at guided reading paired with a vocabulary type of discussion. We try to use those together at some point in time. How did potato chips get invented?
It was in a Moon Lodge restaurant, and some person, it was on the menu, said French fried potatoes, but George Crumb had a smaller version of it, and the person wasn't happy with it, so he took it somewhere else, and he advertised it. So.
Okay, so the person wasn't happy. He was a chef, wasn't he? Or a cook?
Yeah.
And a person complained because the chips, the French fries were too thick, right? So he said, I'm going to make it a little thinner and see if that person is satisfied with what happened. Do you think that, what was his name?
George Crumb.
George Crumb. Do you think he brought those to market, what we know today? No. For potato chips? Who brought those to market today?
Herman Lay.
Herman Lay. Does anyone ever hear Lay's potato chips advertised? So raise your hand if you've seen Lay's potato chips advertised. Okay, do you think Mr. Lay, Herman Lay, invented that potato chip?
Yes. No, he didn't invent it. He brought it to the
He
market.
brought it to market. So he was the entrepreneur, and Chrome was the actual inventor, correct? Okay, who can tell me what happens with an entrepreneur? Think about potato chips. A number of years ago, go ahead.
They improve it and then put it on market.
They improve it and put it on market. Absolutely. That's just where I was going.
Well, I think we try to embed new words in all of our lessons daily. When we're using a term, for example, what I used today in the economics lessons, we were looking at specific vocabulary based on our standards and benchmarks and vocabulary that was relevant to the actual lesson.
1900s? Okay, real good. So they really did this. Was it because they wanted to bring something to market? Why do you think the Wright brothers invented? Why do you think they were inventors?
They were like inspired by it. They were like,
Excited about
yeah.
it? Usually when you see inventors, and this is another key in the difference between inventors and entrepreneurs, usually they have a passion for what they want to do. Do you think the Wright brothers were any part of what goes on with the airlines today? Tell me a little bit about how you think that connection is.
Because they made the airplane, so it had to have some connection. Because we wouldn't have airplanes if they didn't invent the airplane.
And they just improved it.
And people improve it today, don't we?
Yeah.
Every year there's new improvements in the airline industry.
So we try to interject those words as often as possible within that lesson. Vocabulary is really embedded in everything that we do within a classroom lesson or a unit or an activity, and it's really purposeful vocabulary that we want the kids to really pick up and learn.